So we will discuss about this topic, and I'm really happy to have you all of you around here. So when we discuss in our group, as you know, this is a presentation that we are introducing to you because I belong to the Colectivo Mexicano, which is a Mexican association here in the city, and we try to encourage and to promote Mexican culture. So we discuss, it's really important to talk about literature. Why we don't talk about Mexican writers? So we thought, let's think about something beyond the typical Mexican writer. And then I thought, okay, let's talk about beyond the canon. And the first thing that came to my mind when I thought about the canon was like the Greek origin, which means like the rule. So who fits into the rule? And the second thing that came to my mind was the brand of the camera. And the last thing is like the similarity with the word canon. So we will discuss these three things, and you will see that when we arrive to this part, it will be the end of the conference. And then you can ask me. So first, regarding the rule, one of the first mentions regarding writers it was made by Plato. He was a real man of rules. So he wanted to encourage like the perfect citizenship. And he said, if we want a good citizen, like a good society, a good city, we need to leave aside the poets. Because the poets are not good for this, for the city. If we want to have a good, because the poets, they create ideal societies and they, in a way, lie to our soldiers. They encourage disorder in their performances. So they say it's better if we leave them aside because they are too idealistic and they are copying models of the real truth. So then he said, but what happened? In which conditions they can come back to this ideal society? If they create good models. So I thought, okay, these good models, after this first introduction of Plato, became what we now know as the canon, because these good models were allowed to come back to society. These poets were allowed to come back to this from this metaphorical exile that Plato wishes. Is it clear up to now? Yeah? If you have any questions, you can stop me. So then I thought, okay, but who has created a good model up to now? And I say, okay, I'm not Plato, I should ask other friends, what do they think? Because, the answer is in the society there. Who create the good models? Well, those are the writers that have been read. And the writers that sell a lot of books. So I asked my friends, and they say, who is a canonical Mexican writer for you? Can you tell me, please, which is your favorite one? Which is the one that came to my mind immediately? And then I have different answers. Like, the first one is like this guy. Who knows this guy by chance? Yeah? So what's his name,
Rulfo.
Yeah, Rulfo. So he was a real cool guy, and I said, I don't want to talk too much about them. You can ask me after I finish the conference, but I just wanted to show you, like, the canonical Mexican writers, according to my friends. I'm not saying, like, the canon can change and everybody can create his own or her own canon. And then the other one is like this. Do you know these guys? Yeah? No? The first two. Who are they for you?
Cortázar and Marquez.
Yeah? Marquez, and then this one, he won the Nobel Prize recently. Yeah, Vargas Llosa, when he was young, obviously. And then we have here Fuentes. So these were the boom writers, like the most famous one that, like in the European, that came very famous into Europe and into Latin America because of the magical realism and all that. So among them, one was Mexican. This was Fuentes, and it's a very good one. I'm sorry. Then I got this one as well. You know, you read this. I usually read this when you are in secondary schools. And, yeah, you remember? Did you like it? Who is he? Do you know him?
Yeah.
Can you?
Like you said, it's a reference that you read when you were adolescent.
Yeah. There's even a song, I think, isn't it?
By-
Who composed the song? I think Café Tacuba. I think. Yeah. So it's quite popular, and it's for like the young population, and it's Pacheco, Jose Emilio Pacheco, and he said, "Hey." And then we have another one, which is he has a very nice style, as you can see, and he's Monsiváis. Is like a chronicker. The ones that write chronics about the city, and he was a very good essayist, but he was not a good novelist or poet. He was not well known for that. But some people really like him. Once I met him, he went to my hometown, and I was just sitting there listening to him, and he really has a very cultivating voice. And I thought my grandpa was speaking, so I really like it. But he's dead already. So this one, I want to ask you. So this is Villoro. He's a more recent writer. And do you know who is this guy? If someone tell me, I will.
You will what?
I will give you a chocolate later.
You want Lichtenberg?
Yeah. So Villoro is very interesting. One of the brief thoughts that Lichtenberg has is like this one. I really like it. Love is blind, but marriage restores its sight. So I think it's quite wise. So one of the first translator of this writer, German writer. Do you know where is this? Where is this location? Yeah. So because this one was a native from this city. I don't know if he was born here, but for sure he lived a lot of years here. So, and then, Villoro was one of his first indeed, I think the first translator into Spanish of this German writer. So, quite interesting. Then I got to this one, like more than 6. It was a brief survey, so more than 6 answers told me about this guy. You know who is this guy? Yeah? Let's say it. Yeah. Octavio Paz, when he was young, and he also has like very nice style, I think. And then, I mean, everybody, I don't know. How many Mexicans are here? Yeah. So did you read it, Octavio Paz, when you were in, I don't know, secondary school or high school? No?
Not really.
No? Because my friends told me it was obligatory reading, but I don't know if it has changed or so. Yeah? Well, I don't know. Like, it might be.
It should be.
But at least everybody have heard something about Octavio Paz, because it was our Nobel Prize, and everybody we are still very proud about him. So, and he wrote this very interesting book, The Labyrinthine of Solitude. Sorry for my misspelling. So, and in this book, he wrote something really interesting that we have discussed so many times with some of my Mexican friends that are seated there. And who can help me to read this so we can start to discuss? Come on, in the front, the good girls.
I can read.
Yeah, please. Just the first one.
If the chingada is a representation of the violated
Yeah.
mother, it is appropriate to associate her with the conquest, which was also a violation.
Yeah. So, have you ever heard the word chingada, or the Mexicans, of course, like, will have a lot of bad words like vete a la chingada, or this type of things. So, a lot of our bad words are related to this word. And the son of the Malinche, it was one of the essays content in this book that I mentioned it before. And what Octavio Paz says is like, I will show you a picture. So this is the Malitzin or the Malinche. And when the Spaniards came to Mexico, here we have the indigenous people, maybe they were the Aztecs. So when they came, the person that helped them to the Spanish to be a translator, and the person that mediate among this negotiation was the Malinche. She was like a very important person during one period for Cortés, who was a conqueror. And then that's why we return to this. Octavio Paz associates this idea of Malinche with the chingada. The chingada, can someone help me to translate the word chingada? How would you say it in English? The fuck up. Oh, the fuck up, yeah. That means chingada. The fuck up, yeah. Because what is he saying? Like, we are sons of this woman that in a way was violated or raped, and then it's associated with the conquest, but it was a conquest that, of course, it was not a nice conquest. The conquest it always implied like violence, it always implied appropriation, well, most of it. So she said, like, Octavio Paz says, we are son of this woman that was raped, and now, then he mentioned something really strong, like the Mexican people have not forgiven La Malinche, the woman that I showed you, for her betrayal. She embodies the open, the chingado, the fuck up, to our close, stoic, impassive Indians. What does this mean? Like, does it say to you something, or do you have any feeling about it? Because, I mean, this is like a very important essay about how the Mexican culture is understood. And Paz says, you know, we're sons of this woman that betrayed the Indians, and that's like the origin of most of our problems, according to Paz. I'm saying just according to Paz. So, do you want to add something to this? Yeah.
One question.
Yeah.
So la Malinche is the same as the chingado. It's the same person.
Yeah, that's the association that Paz does.
Okay.
So we are sons
And
of
the same image.
the same image. It's a metaphorical image. So we have the chingada because it was a woman that was fucked up by the Spaniards, and this woman that was fucked up was called also La Malinche. So it's the same person. Yeah.
So this is only from Octavio Paz visions.
Yeah. I'm introducing.
Just to clarify.
Yeah, sure. Because it's just like I'm showing you was like one perspective of how Octavio Paz, which is still a very important thinker. Well, he is already dead as well, but I mean he is a very important writer for the Mexican society. And this book is still used in many schools. So yeah. So we have this. This is the image. Then I really like this. This is in a picture, paint that is located in Tlaxcala, and this is the author. So we go. I told you that now we are a bit behind, not like beyond the canon, a bit. And then we have the camera. I told you. So I said, when you take a picture, Lavi that loves cameras, when you take a picture, sometimes you have to open the diaphragm so more light get into it. So I'll try to do something like that, to put more light into this topic that is really problematic, and it really reflects about the Mexican society, the problem of La Malinche. So do you still remember this guy? He looks different, but it's the same one as this one. You know? So, this is Octavio Paz again, and once he was married with this girl, and this girl is, this woman is Elena Garro. Indeed, she wrote a very important book that I think it was in the 53 that she started to write it, 53, but she was able to publish it until 60-something when 100 of Solitude was like, well, some people argue that she was like even, because this book is full of magical realism. So some people say like, yeah, she was before Garcia Marquez, and it's a big discussion about it. So still, she's a very important writer, and a lot of times she has been associated only with Octavio Paz, and not as an independent woman writer. All the time people say, oh, she was crazy, she was married with Paz, and she did some crazy things in politics, but besides that, she was a very good writer. And then, here comes the funny part. I want that you help me to read. I select a short story from Elena Garro. It's called It's the Fall of the Tlaxcaltecas. The Tlaxcaltecas were also the indigenous group that betrayed the Aztecs. So the Tlaxcaltecas were allies with the Spanish because they had problems with the Aztecs. The Aztecs also have problems with different indigenous groups. So the Tlaxcaltecas were also betrayers in a way. Well, I will introduce you just briefly what we'll talk about it. So Laura Aldama recounts to Nacha. Okay, so you recounts to Nachita, her native housekeeper or indigenous housekeeper, about her trip to Guanajuato with her mother-in-law Margarita. Margarita doesn't appear here. After running out of gas on the bridge over Lake Huitzeo, Margarita goes to find gas, allowing Laura to escape to be with her 16th century Aztec husband. Here we have the fantastic element, okay? Or she called it cousin husband. The Aztec husband will be called also cousin husband. Laura is part of the Spanish war led by Hernán Cortés. Again, the Aztec civilization in Tenochtitlan. Returning to the life in the 20th century Mexico City, Laura feels guilty and torn between her two lives. So Laura is living two lives. One in the 16th century with the cousin husband, because before it was common, like even here in Europe, to get married with your cousin. So that's why, yeah. So that's why in that time, of course, not now. So she called him the cousin husband. And like the other life is in the 20th century, where she's married with Pablo. So Laura is married with Pablo in the 20th century. So yeah, we're gonna start. So the scene is like there's a talk between Laura and Nachita. You can come here.
You're going to fight?
You are in the kitchen. Laura is telling her what happened to her in the trip. You appear only in the scene too. So everybody thinks that she just met an Indian that is following her. However, she believes that the end of the man is coming, and that this Indian is his cousin husband that came for her. So let's listen.
Outside, the night raised the roses in the garden and pulled shadows over the fig trees. Far behind, from the branches, the illuminated windows burned from the neighbors' houses. The kitchen was separated from the world by an invisible wall of sadness, by a compass of hope.
Don't you agree, Nacha?
Yes, señor.
I'm like them, a traitor.
The cook folded her arms in hopes the water would boil.
And you, Nachita? Are you a traitor?
She looked at her expectantly. If Nacha shared her disloyalty, she would understand her, and Laura needed someone to understand her that night.
Yes, señora, I am also a traitor.
Satisfied, she served the coffee in a white cup, put in 2 lumps of sugar, and placed it in front of Laura, who, deep in thought, took some small sips.
The terrible thing is, I discovered in that instant that how unbelievable is real. It's the fault of the Tlaxcaltecas, I told him. He turned and looked at the sky. Afterwards, his eyes rested on mine once again. And the other Indians? I asked him. Those who came out alive are in the same situation as I am, he said. He saw that each word hurt his tongue, and I stopped talking, thinking of the shame of my treason. You already know that. I am afraid, and that's what I betrayed.
You can read the.
Yeah. In the second part, Laura escaped to meet his cousin husband from the 16th century, and his husband Pablo from the 20th century has been looking for her. Laura has blood stains over the breast of her suit. The scene is in a common room.
Senora, last night a man was spying through the window of your room. Nacha and I screamed and screamed.
We heard nothing.
It's him.
Who's him?
Asked the senor, looking at the senora as if he were going to kill her. Terrified, the senora put her hand over her mouth. And when the senor asked the same question over, each time with more anger, he responded.
The Indian that followed me from Cuitel to Mexico City.
We have to call the police immediately.
Josefina showed him the window through which the stranger had been peering, and Pablo examined it carefully. On the sill were traces of almost fresh blood.
He's wounded.
It was an Indian, senor.
Can you explain to me the origin of these stains?
The senora remained silent, looking at the bloodstains over the breast of her suit, and the senor struck the dresser with a fist. Then he walked over to the senora and gave her a hard slap. Then she goes to the kitchen with Machita.
His looks are savage, and his conduct is incoherent, and his words, it is not my fault that he accepted defeat.
So, coming back to this idea of La Malinche, well, tell me your impressions. I mean, first actors, perhaps. What did you think? How did you feel as being Nachita? Why you support the señora?
Since I was the what do you call it, the service, the person who was working for her, I have to be in a obeying a situation or obeying attitude. Like everything that she says, I just have to support, and her word is what's right, and I just have to agree with her.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what I think, I have to agree with her.
Okay.
Support her.
Any other questions? Like, did you like it? Did you dislike it? Can you associate something with La Malinche or not really?
No, I felt more like, I mean, I like the surreality that
Yeah.
she was living two lives at once.
Yeah,
But then also at the same time, it reminded me of the soap operas because
Okay.
it's the typical scenario: the big rich woman with her servants and her husband who is an asshole to her. So yeah, it was nice.
yeah. Okay, cool. Another opinion? No? Okay, I will give you my interpretation and some others' interpretation. Of course, I read it. And we can discuss if you agree or not, but regarding the topic of La Malinche that I introduced before, there are some key messages that are depicted in this short story. So, when Laura says, you know, Nacha is the fall of the Tlaxcaltecas, in a way it has, and also another word, you already know that I'm afraid and that's why I betrayed. So if you read the whole story, because here of course I just pick up like the best part, but if you read the whole story, Laura is really concerned about what happened to the indigenous people. And she feels really sad because she said, okay, I was married with this guy, which was an Indian, and I betrayed him. And I feel responsible. But then she said to him, I'm sorry that I betrayed you, but I was really afraid. And I didn't have a choice. She's saying like, it was not my choice to become a betrayer. And in a way, she's talking about La Malinche, but of course she's not mentioning it, but she's saying, it was not my choice to be a La Malinche. I was afraid at the time, so they took me. And then, of course, the betrayal became true because they took me. And then, another aspect that is, I really, like, this was my favorite part when he said, like, he looks are savage and his conduct is as incoherent as his words. It's not my fault that he accepted defeat. She's talking here, is the end of the conversation when Laura goes to the kitchen with the housekeeper again, to say that it's not, she's talking about her husband. she's saying that it's not the fault of her, because she believes that the end of the times is coming. She's like in a very apocalyptic time in this story. Like the end of the time is coming. That's why the cousin husband is coming to pick her up from this war. And she said, like, Pablo, in a way, accept like a perpetual defeat. So she's saying that Pablo became defeated and he already accepted and took it as granted. So it's not saying like, she said, okay, I was a betrayer, but I want to become something else. But in the case of Pablo, he is still like, he's the son of La Malinche, because he says, okay, I really don't mind if you betray, don't betray, I don't care. I have my life. He's also depicted as in a soap opera, like they are a rich family, so he really doesn't care about the indigenous people, and they have a lot of housekeepers that are indigenous as well. So the question here is, who was the real betrayer? La Malinche, in this case performed by Laura, or Pablo, that already accept for granted what we have in Mexico? That's the question that she's opening. Obviously in a very poetic manner, but saying like, well, maybe one woman betrayed, but then the whole society became part of this betrayal. And what is worst? To do it once or to do it forever, or accept it and say, okay, we betrayed and we were traitors, and who cares? So this is like do you have any questions? I was like really, no? Lavinia?
Yes, I'm puzzled. So
Okay.
the Indian who came at the window had blood, and that means that's a betrayal that he was dying on the window.
He has blood because it's just like a magical element to add that he's coming from a war, from this war between. Imagine that the Indian is here. I don't know. They are talking, but imagine that one of the Indians is here, and after this talking, they have a war. So they are. The Indian is coming from this time, from the 16th century, and he's coming to pick her up in the 20th century.
Yeah, but he's wounded.
I think the one that is the husband, Pablo.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pablo is the one that is in the 20th century, and Laura moves between these two wars, the 16th century and the 20th century.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a very interesting short story. I know it's really hard for you, especially if you haven't read about magical realism. You will see like, this sounds like crazy because they are moving between this fantastical and real world. But once you read it, you will, because for instance, what you mentioned about Nachita and Laura, it's an important element to create. If nobody believes to Laura, then she will be treated as crazy. But she's not crazy because at least Nachita knows that it's true. So this is like type of poetic argument to say, okay, someone believes her, so maybe it can be true that she travels across the time or so. Yeah, I know it's hard. I'm sorry. Any questions about it? It's too hard, or I was clear, or not connections with La Malinche at all? I know it's like overinterpretation, perhaps. So now I want to show you. This is like another very important poet from Mexico as well. She's called Rosario Castellanos, and she started publishing in the 50s as well, and she has like one poem called La Malinche, indeed. And I wanted, like, you listen to her, she has a beautiful voice, well, at least for me. And she's reading her poem La Malinche.
La sostuvo no con el respeto que encierra la majestad de reina, sino con ese alejamiento mutuo en que se humillan ambos, los amantes, los cómplices. Desde la plaza de los intercambios, mi madre anunció a muerte. La balanza se sostuvo un instante sin moverse, y el grano de cacao quedó quieto en el arca, y el sol permanecía en la mitad del cielo, como aguardando un signo que fue, cuando partió como una flecha, el ay agudo de las plañideras. Se deshojó la flor de muchos pétalos, se evaporó el perfume, se consumió la llama de la antorcha. Una niña regresa, escarbando, al lugar en el que la partera depositó su ombligo. Regresa al sitio de los que vivieron. Reconoce a su padre asesinado. Ay, 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 con veneno, con puñal, con trampa ante sus pies, con lazo de horca. Se toman de la mano y caminan, caminan, perdiéndose en la niebla. Tal era el llanto y las lamentaciones sobre algún cuerpo anónimo, un cadáver que no era el mío, porque yo, vendida a mercaderes, iba como esclava, como nadie, al destierro. Arrojada, expulsada de mi reino, de mi palacio, de la entraña tibia de la que me dio a luz en tálamo legítimo y que me aborreció porque yo era su igual en figura y en rango, y se contempló en mí y odió su imagen y destrozó el espejo contra el suelo. Yo avanzo hacia el destino entre cadenas y dejo atrás lo que todavía escucho, los fúnebres rumores con los que se me entierra, y la voz de mi madre con lágrimas que decretan muerte.
Can we turn it off, please? So, did you like it? No? It was too intense or?
Yeah, I think it was. And probably it's better if you give us some explanation because it can be really confusing for.
Yeah. But at first I want like your impressions because I think sometimes the poems not need to be too explained because sometimes it's what you feel, like the first read and then if you like it or not. I mean, I want to know if you like it or if you like at least the voice or the rhythm or... You like it, girls, or not? Yeah? Yeah. Any impression about it? Can you relate something with our topic we're discussing in regards to La Malinche, or not really? Did you see something? I tried to underline the things that were like that I consider were.
I think her voice was very sad.
Very sad. Yeah.
Very strong and sad at the same time.
Well, can I help you? Indeed, it is a very sad poem. That's why I think her voice is really accurate. She is like attending to a funeral in a way. Because the narrator is telling that her mother already declared that she was expelled. She was a dead person for her. And why she was a dead person or why she was expelled from this society is because she was a betrayal. And she was La Malinche indeed. Obviously, it's not mentioned in the poem, but the title, you can read it, it's like La Malinche. So La Malinche is talking about herself, and she's saying, I was sold. Indeed, I think it says, like, she beholds her father. And at first she noticed, like, she has a father, and it really hurts her that she sees that her father is dead, She betrayed her, like, her group, indigenous group. And then, like, she started watching all these dead people, the cadaver, and then she said, like, but I was sold to the Americans, went forth to exile like a slave, like a pariah. So in a way, again, this topic of, okay, I am La Malinche, but I was sold. And there's always this discussion if La Malinche did it because she fell in love with Cortés, the conqueror, the Spanish conqueror, or because she didn't have a choice and her family saw her. So, and also the mother says, decrease her debt. Because she said, you betray us, you are not part of us anymore. But who sold the daughter? In a way, it was her family. So it's this double discourse, like the Malinche really don't understand, well, this narrator as a Malinche, obviously, doesn't understand her position in the war. Because she said, I'm really sad to see all these dead people. I'm really sorrow about them. But and also my mom expelled me from the family, from the society. Nobody wants to talk to me anymore. But I don't know why, because it was not my entire choice. So it's this questioning of how to read or to reinterpret this myth of La Malinche. And it is like, obviously another perspective from a woman, and Rosario Castellano introduced this in a very sad manner, because also the boys and everything and all the elements, like you can even imagine how was this perpetration or this conquest. You can imagine like all the blood, all the dead people that was part of this conquer. Yeah. So you can imagine with poetic words. Would you like to say something else, or not really, or it's too difficult? Yeah. And then I have another one, and I promise you it's the last one. It's the last interpretation, like a more modern interpretation about La Malinche, and it's from a Chicana writer. So let's see, and you tell me what's your opinion about it, if you like it or not.
This poem is called La Malinche. Yo soy La Malinche. My people called me Malin sin Tepenal. The Spaniards call me Doña Marina. I came to be known as Malinche. And Malinche came to mean traitor. They called me Chingada. Chingada. Huh. Chingada. Screwed. Of noble ancestry, for whatever that means. I was sold into slavery by my royal family so that my brother could get my inheritance. And then the omens began. A god, a new civilization, the downfall of our empire. And you came, my dear Hernan Cortés, to share your civilization, to play a god. And I began to dream. I saw and I acted. I saw our world, and I saw yours, and I saw another. And yes, I helped you against Emperor Moctezuma Xocoyotzin himself. I became interpreter, advisor, and lover. They could not imagine me dealing on a level with you, so they said I was raped, used, chingada, chingada. But I saw our world, and your world, and another. No one else could see. Beyond one world, none existed. And you yourself cried the night the city burned, and burned at your orders. The most beautiful city on earth in flames. You cried broken tears the night you saw your destruction. My homeland ached within me, but I saw another world, a world yet to be born. And our child was born, and I was immortalized. Chingada. Years later, you took away my child, my sweet mestizo New World child, to raise him in your world. You still didn't see. And history would call me chingada. But chingada I was not tricked, not screwed, not traitor, for I was not traitor to myself.
I saw a dream and I reached another world. La raza. La raza.
So did you like this poem or not really? Yeah? Why did you like it? Why?
No, I have a question.
Yes.
What is the raza means?
The race?
The
But
people.
so it was really interesting to see that she did this la raza, and she was pointing at us
Yeah.
because that's what raza means. It's the crowd, the people. That's how Mexican scholars, I mean, among ourselves. Yeah.
So, yes, you wanted to say something? Come on.
No, just I want to say that raza is the people.
Okay.
It's like us.
The mixture of human races that gave birth to the current Mexican that are, I don't know, they have indigenous background and a Spanish background and from other countries as well. That's the race, the Mexican race, sort of. Another comment about this poem. Did you like it more than the other ones, or?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think it's really powerful. I think it summarizes several things. And also, like you said, she's a Chicana author, I guess. So it's like this is my take of the poem. Like she did several research about, several sources of the same story, and then she summarized it here from, her Chicano point of view. I don't know.
Yeah. Does everybody knows what is a Chicano writer or not really?
I'm not very sure.
Yeah. So is this writers that they have Mexican background but they are living in the U.S. and they are Mexican? They have Mexican roots, most of them. But over there's a professional in Chicano literature as well. So you can ask her later. Yeah. But they really reflect upon this Mexican. But what is really interesting is that she chose a different point of view because she said well, in the end, what the Mexicans are is thanks of this mixture between the Spanish and the indigenous, and that's what the Mexicans are now. It's not like they were only indigenous or only Spanish. It's like thanks to the relationship between Cortés, which was the Spaniard conqueror, and La Malinche, like a new generation came out of it. And then it's another way to interpret this conquer, to say in the end, after all these battles, all these conflicts, something good came out of it. And that's what we have to promote or to encourage in the Mexicans, to be proud of. Instead of saying, oh, we are son of la chingada or so, saying hey, but we're son of this mixture of races or mixture of different ethnical or different nationalities are behind us. Yeah. So any other comments? Which of the poems that I introduced did you like it the better or so? Which one did you like it most? The last one? Well, it's more modern, isn't it? The first one. From Castellanos, you mean?
Yeah, it's very sad. And in this one, she's speaking for herself. And she's telling that, yes, I betrayed my people, but I helped you and I saw a dream. And I had a dream and I realized it. So it's more strong.
Yeah. It's more, yeah? No, please tell me.
I have the feeling that in the third poem, the Malinche was talking, kind of not clarifies, but tells people I did it out of love, and that doesn't come so clearly in the first two poems which we read, and I like that because it's a part of the past.
Yeah.
And normally we do things in the past,
mm-hmm.
and sometimes we hurt people we love very much, and it's contradictory because we love them and we also hurt them because sometimes just because of that. You
Yeah.
know? And at that time it feels terrible.
Yeah.
But then after some time you have like some kind of perspective and you kind of can understand why you did what you did.
Yeah. Yeah, I truly like what you think about it. I think it's more like a future approach, say like, well, we're now, which path are we going to take? Like just blame the past or go into the future and say, okay, this is like what we are now, let's continue with this. So I just have like...
One question. So,
yeah.
do you know what does he mean when she says, years later you took away my child, my sweet Mr. newborn child, to raise him in your world? So is that literal or it's like some kind of...
Well, the thing is, later on, La Malinche was sold to another family. When Cortés didn't need it anymore, he sold her to a different family. And then she has a kid, and of course, so.
They had a child.
Sorry?
Malinche and Hernán Cortés, they had also children.
Well, I think some people think about it. I cannot imagine because I was not there, and it's really hard. Like especially because afterwards she was sold to another family. So, I mean, maybe a historian can tell you yes, according to this proof, but I don't know. It's like reading the Bible and saying yes, this happened. I don't know if you can truly say if it happened or not. But it's like a metaphorical way to say that what we discussed before with Lena Garro, in the sense that some Mexicans became more proud of the Spaniards than of the Indians. So, yeah. But then she said, like, let's try to overcome that part as well. So, yeah, so that was the only question. I just came out with one question, like when the Malinche will be allowed to return from exile, to this Platonic exile that I told you into the beginning. So, and then who was the guilty, we already discussed that, and I'm open to your questions, and if you have other ideas, or if you want to finish here, it's fine. Do you have a question? I see your face.
I have a question, but it's regarding the poem.
Yeah.
It says, you cried broken tears and that you saw your destruction. I don't understand why the conqueror like Mexico, but it still destroyed it.
Can I see it? You cry broken tears the night you saw your destruction. Yeah. I think it's La Malinche talking. Because the Malinche cried the night she saw the destruction that was in Mexico because of her relation with Hernán Cortés.
But you means the conquest.
Oh, then it reflects. There's one part in history called the Tree of the Sad Night, and it's called something like that. And it's when Hernán Cortés is crying, El Árbol de la Noche Triste. I don't know how to call it, and it's like a specific part of history when apparently Cortés is crying, but I think it's because he thinks that he will lose, but then the thing get fixed. So it's more historical. Yeah. But in a way, I think what she also means is like, of course, the Spaniards has to destroy a lot of religious background so they can introduce their own religion. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. So they have to destroy a lot of beautiful things that already exist in Mexico. So, I don't know. Yeah.
relationship do you think these three authors, these 2 points, has with the national identity of feeling Mexican?
Yeah.
Do you think, because there is this sense of we were good in the past, you know, because we had these ancient civilizations that were powerful, and some of them invented a lot of things, and the zero, and then some strangers came and took us these things, these great things that we
had.
How is the relationship between these authors and this national identity?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and I really like it because when I start researching about it, it also makes me reflect about my own identity. And it also made me reflect about how different Mexican people, because I mean, like, even though you can say we're a country, not everybody thinks the same. And I think the most you have other perspectives, the better you can have different opinions. So if you read these 3 writers and you say, I pick up this position and I like this position about La Malinche that see more to the future than to the past, I think it's valid. But there are some of my friends that they say, I think Octavio Paz was right, and we are son of this raped woman. I cannot tell you which is the best position. I wish everybody has like a more open one, like more like, okay, this is part of the past and there's nothing we can do, we cannot return to the past, anything. But anyway, there are a lot of Mexicans that they still have this other position, and it's valid, or like a more intermediate position.
I guess the most common is the victimized position. This idea that if it wasn't for the Spaniards, we would be this. I mean, of course, it's impossible to prove that. But that's my feeling. I mean, between my relatives, between my friends back home, there's always this victimized position. And what I like about these authors is I always tell them that even if we wish really hard, we cannot neglect the Spanish part of our blood, even in traditions, in what we do, in our lifestyle. I mean, somehow we have to agree to the idea that we are mestizos. We are not indigenous, we're not Spanish, we're mestizos, and we should be proud of that, not be victimized.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. Like, it's really like this victimization thing. I think it's more in past position, like closer to. That's why I wanted to show you like these 3 different perspectives, so you can choose whatever you think is the best one. But I think in Mexico, like the 3 type of positions are still present. Like, yeah.
But there's still also this view that mestizos are the cosmic race, and at some point we feel very proud of these, like having these 2 backgrounds, and it's only related to what education, for example, as kids in the school, government or the public education system teaches to be proud of this mestizo culture. But what does this mestizo culture mean? I am not really I have not this concept really clear. Is it a very unified national identity, or because there is a lot of indigenous groups and some of them they don't really feel part of this mestizo culture. They don't feel as Mexicans as some of maybe that live in cities could feel. It's very hard to disentangle this identity.
Yeah. I think, it's very difficult to define the identity just as one and the nation just as one, or try to put all the groups just in one box, because, I mean, like, it's really complicated. But I think the more we can reflect upon these topics, the more we can see or try to understand how we can solve this, because it's part of our Mexican problems.
Or just to accept our society. I mean, we are victims when we want to be victims. We want to think, oh, we are a screwed up country because of the Spaniards. but then we want to believe that we are superior. That he said that we are compared with the indigenous people, right?
Yeah.
So I guess it would be better if we accept how is Mexico, how is heterogeneous, and start dialogue or conversation to be unified.
Yeah, or what is true is like what he also mentions, and we also saw in the first short story that we'll read us here. It's like, in a way, if you also neglect the indigenous group that also exists in Mexico and haven't been totally integrated, it's like you are betraying as Le Malinche. So it's just like you have to really reflect, because a lot of people still in Mexico, they are very like, I prefer white people than indigenous people, and that's true. Or people that say, no, I'm just closer to the indigenous and the white are the worst. So it's really difficult to try to say, not the extremes, so how we negotiate those poles and how we put them together to try to be better in a way, or a better country. Yeah. Any other question? Yeah?
You said there's a political background of Rosario Castellanos.
Yeah.
What was it?
She was a very interesting woman. I think she was one of the first feminists in Mexico, and but she went to Israel as ambassador, I think because of some political problems in Mexico. And
to the left, to the right?
Left, totally left. Mm-hmm. She was very supportive of the indigenous groups. Indeed, her family was very racist, and they were from a small town. And she got this indigenous feeling because her nanny was indigenous. And she learned indigenous language as well. So she wrote about the indigenous population in Mexico. So a lot of her stories are a very good approach to the indigenous life. I think she was a very smart woman, and she died accidentally in Israel when she was an ambassador. Very sad, yeah. But a very good woman, yeah. Any other question? Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure, but do you think that the topic is a little bit has something to do with intercultural or transcultural identity?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, then how would you say if it's intercultural or something different like transcultural?
Oh, you mean that? You always have that. I think the last poem is more intercultural, because the last poem tried to connect like the indigenous with the Spaniards and say nobody's like, let's try to initiate a dialogue. And transcultural, I think is very hard here, but maybe each Mexican, they have different backgrounds behind them. For instance, in my family I have one aunt that was French, another one that was Spaniard, other indigenous, so I have and I have a lot of family living in the US, and a lot of Mexicans, like as everybody in the world, I think we have like this transcultural background in our blood.
I'm sorry, I don't know anything about Mexican literature, so I'm gonna say something really stupid here.
No, it's fine.
First you showed us the writers that were part of the canon, and you showed us Octavio Paz, and then you made the link with this woman who wrote the scene, and then you showed us 3 women, but they are not part of the canon.
They are in a way.
Okay, that's what I want you to clarify. So their voices, when they talk about La Malinche, are they like respected and well heard and people start debating it, or are they like marginal voices?
I would say the second one. That's why I wanted, because my idea was like, nowadays for people that study literature, for sure they know by heart Elena Garro, Rosario Castellanos, and even the Chicano literature. But what is true is that in the primary and secondary or even high school, you don't, like most of the time, you don't read any woman writer. That's true. And you don't see at least like the Labyrinth of Solitude, it was also an obligatory book for me. And the professor never explained to me another perspective. And I say, Professor, but I don't agree with Octavio. What? You don't agree with Octavio Paz? He's our Nobel Prize. You should be proud of him. And you say like, okay, but I don't feel like I'm son of La Malinche, you know? So it's very hard, I think, nowadays. But I'm sure, like, as the times go by, as times, there's a song about it. You know it. Things will change, I'm sure. Like, we can integrate, I mean, people read very few books in Mexico, that's one thing. And if you add this, that they have to read other writers, it's very difficult. And it's very difficult sometimes to discuss with your teacher because they truly believe in this canon, that of course they are part of the canon, but it's like a second type of canon. Yeah. Nice. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Actually, especially the canon texts are part of the canon, but not of the Mexican canon, but of the canon in the United States. It's actually pretty interesting because I'm writing my thesis about Sandra Cisneros. I don't know if you're familiar with her name. She's the author of House on Mango Street, for example, and she's really famous in the United States. She's also Chicana, so she has Mexican background but lives in the States.
Yeah.
And so far, no Mexican knew about her. Whenever I mentioned her name, no one knew about her. Like children in 9th grade in the States already know her books. They have to read her books at school. So it really depends. When you talk about the canon, you have to
from which perspective?
Canon we're talking about. So yeah, I think the outward view on Mexican identity is also really informative and really interesting. So these texts are definitely also very relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, I have, like, when I was in primary school, I have never heard about Chicano literature, for instance. And we have a lot of immigrants in the US. We should, like, read something about it, but not at all. It's not common.
I have a question to that. How Mexican to Chicano writers feel? Are they, what do they consider themselves?
That's a very difficult question. There's constantly this conflict of identity. I mean, during the last decade, there has been a discussion in Mexico whether Mexicans actually have an identity or not, because it's so mixed. So instead of talking about national identity, people started to talk about regional identity. Like Yucatan is really different from the north of Mexico, for example, or from the west of Mexico. And in the case of Chicanos, this is even stronger because they are constantly considering whether they're still Mexicans, whether they are Americans, whether they are something else. And this Chicano actually is an abbreviation that comes from Mexicano, and they just say Chicano, you know? Yeah, and also Americano, so it's some kind of hybrid. And I think this is how they feel. There's like this strong struggle of identity. You can see all different kind of motives about food, about traditions like quinceañeras, or about family structures and so on. So yeah, I think this is.
And I was wondering, actually, is the most radical form, and in the end, it's not proper Mexican also. So she's kind of trying to defend that position, but maybe because she feels herself kind of a traitor. I mean, she could be judged as a traitor because this person or this doesn't actually live in Mexico. Yeah. So I was wondering about how do they consider that?
I can suggest you one book about it, like Gloria and Saldúa have written about this Chicano identity. So it's very interesting what she thinks about it. And I don't think they consider themselves as betrayers. They are more like in between the US and Mexico. Okay.
I find kind of not funny, but remarkable that these three women who have these three texts we have heard and read are women talking about an image of a woman also.
Yeah.
And of course, the men of the canon are the men of the canon, because we talked about the canon like the concept of canon of like from the 60s or 70s, and boom literature from Latin America, and I find it actually in a way what she said about them not belonging, maybe not really classical, non-canonical authors, but maybe if one sees it in the perspective of who already wrote about the Malinche, and but maybe from a point, I don't know if that happened before, but for the first time, a woman was talking about the image of also a woman. That kind of turns everything, because the empathy and such a huge
because
step,
you're totally right. Like, why this guy has to write like about? I mean, maybe he didn't understand, because the woman can write about another woman and try to understand why she did that or why she didn't do that. So, yeah, that's totally true. I think we can finish now because thank you so much.